My name is SRIDHAR. I'm the Festival Director of KASHISH Mumbai International Queer Film Festival, which is having its 12th edition right now. Today, we are joining the Q&A for the film A Worm in the Heart, and we have Paul Rice, the director and writer and cinematographer and producer, and we have Liam Jackson Montgomery, executive producer and interviewer. Just to introduce both of them, Paul Rice is an art director and filmmaker, originally from Ireland, currently based in California. Paul is a 2012 graduate from the Limerick School of Art and Design in Ireland. A Worm in the Heart is a feature film directorial debut. Congratulations on this wonderful debut. Liam Jackson Montgomery is a writer and filmmaker originally from Wales, UK, currently based in California. As of 2018, Liam has begun creating queer short films that he writes and co-directs with his partner, Paul Rice. So really honored to have both of you. You are such an inspiration, making such wonderful projects. And A Worm in the Heart is your directorial debut. Congratulations on that. It's been traveling a lot of festivals, right?
It has, yeah. And like, I just want to say, honestly, thank you so much for including us in your festival. Like, we are so delighted to be shown in India. Like, truly, like, it was really cool to be a part of this festival. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and what an introduction. Thank you, Sridhar. That's amazing. Yeah. Very happy to be with you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
So just tell us a bit about yourself. You both were born and raised in one country and now settled in another country, but chose another country to focus your film on, So what has been, in short, what has been your journey?
You said it really well. We're both from different countries and we now live in a different country. So we have kind of an interest in how other countries operate and what other countries are like. And I think I came out just as Ireland voted on the gay marriage referendum, and it passed, luckily, which was great. But I remember researching at the time just what it was like in other countries and what their laws were like. And Russia, very famously, is unfortunately a really tough and kind of terrible place to be LGBT plus or, queer. And I remember feeling so happy about Ireland's referendum, but thinking maybe, is there something I could do? Like, I didn't have much money at the time, but, I was a creative person and I like to make film. I thought maybe, is there something I could do with my skills to help the queer community internationally? And that's kind of where the idea was born, really.
And I think as well, it was really important for us to always remember that things weren't as ideal for us growing up in our own countries and holding our own countries accountable. As a child growing up, I never thought that I could be in a relationship or get married or anything else like that, because our own governments wouldn't allow us to even talk about LGBT subjects publicly or in schools because of Section 28. So when you are living in a country that does repress your community, you do feel really helpless. So now that we're only on the other side of it by a few years, it's easy to forget that we were all in that position before. So, now that we have seen the other side, it's good to revisit countries that are going through similar kind of awful laws. And
yeah,
I think it was important for us to try and explore that.
Definitely.
But why did you decide to embark on the journey to make A Worm in the Heart? Particularly, why Russia? I mean, you talked about it a bit, but you can expand on that. Why particularly Russia?
It's a few things kind of happened all at once. I believe the year I came out, Russia enacted the gay propaganda law, which, as you see in the film, prohibits any public display of being, gay or LGBT plus in public. And, when you come out as gay, it's a very sensitive, weird time for you. And I just remember thinking and reading at that time about that law and just thinking how horrific it was. And it always really stuck with me. And then, a couple of years went by, and bit of a strange answer, but I took a train across Canada and I really thought it was really beautiful. And I really loved taking that train ride. And I filmed out the window and thought it was beautiful. And sometimes, as a creative person, your ideas just kind of come from many different places. And as I said before, during the marriage equality referendum in Ireland, I was thinking it is so much harder in other countries. I wonder what could I do? And then I remembered that train ride. I remembered Russia in particular, and it felt so harsh in Russia. And I think, you know, in Western media, in Irish media, in America, the news has a real focus on Russia quite often, on Vladimir Putin, on the laws that he is enacting. So Russia kind of looms large, and I think has always played a big role in Western news and Western media. So it felt maybe timely and appropriate.
And also as well, almost all of Russia's media is state-run as well. So if you can't talk about essentially who you are without breaking these very vague propaganda laws, then you're never going to hear the stories of actual LGBT people living in that country. So, you know, what better way to go and discover it and put these stories on display than actually going there and recording these people and their everyday lives, and, you know, things that would never have been publicly legally posted for people to hear. So I think that was a really big motivation for us.
How challenging was it for you both to find and connect with the LGBTQ people, because they're so underground in Russia? There's hardly any visibility of them. Of course, there are some organizations when you Google them, but like it's very difficult to find them. You know, I mean, I'm sure it must have taken years of research or trying to find somebody through somebody and going through the whole route. How complicated was that?
It was definitely a hard process. You mentioned there in your question that there are a few organizations, human rights, LGBT rights organizations in Russia. Not many, but there are a few. And so I contacted them and said that we really wanted to make a film about, you know, LGBTQ life in Russia. Would they be interested in meeting with us if we were to come to Russia? And we got a few yeses, we got a few names. So we were really lucky to talk to different directors or people working in these organizations. And then I asked them, hey, do you have any friends? Do you have anyone in your circles that would like to talk to us? And that kind of expanded our pool a little bit. And then I went and I added them all on Facebook, and then VK, and VK is like Russia's Facebook. And then, you know, we really wanted the film to have a nice mixture of people, not just activists working in the human rights field, but also people that, as Liam said earlier, would be afraid to share their stories publicly in Russia, but maybe they would tell us since we were coming from overseas. I scrolled through their friend lists and then clicked on people who I thought maybe they're queer, maybe they're gay or LGBT plus, and then I went into their friend list and then their friend list, and so it became this kind of extending network of people. And when we felt comfortable enough with the people we had, we Zoom called. Well, back then it was Skype. We Skype called to make sure that they were who they said they were. And then once we were in Russia, quite often people really liked talking with us, and they would actually call their friend and say, hey, I just met with these two guys. They're in our city for 2 more days. I think we should meet with them. So it happened very organically and bit by bit.
It was kind of important for us to actually really vet people before we went out there, but with the language barrier and all the rest of it, it was quite difficult. And there were a few occasions where we were planning to meet with people, and then we found out that they were orthodox, right-wing extremists that we're not very well intended. So luckily for those people, we managed to kind of weed them out. Having said that, though, you never know who you're going to meet. So when you're waiting in an industrial complex, a really old Soviet building in 4 miles outside of St. Petersburg, and you're just like, oh my God, are they going to come? Yeah. We still had those moments.
When you went there, some people must have agreed to be filmed, but when you went there, they said, no, we can't be filmed, or they didn't turn up for the meeting at all. Things like that happened, or?
Yeah, it did. Towards the end of the film, news of violence increasing was happening in Russia. So the kind of the LGBT plus community of Russia, it's relatively small, so word travels fast. We agreed to meet with I think it was 8 people in Irkutsk, which is a very, very small town in the middle of Siberia. And as we were traveling there on train, it took a couple of days to get there. One by one, people dropped out of wanting to be in the film because there was a huge surge of violence against LGBT plus people, particularly gay men in Chechnya. And so I think everyone just said, hey, like, we can't risk meeting people. So that happened in Irkutsk. And quite often earlier in the film, we'd meet with people and they would say, hey, I can't show my face. Can we film, but maybe don't show my face? So, you know, we were always just happy to do whatever made people feel the most comfortable because it's really hard, you know, so we just always wanted to be helpful and not harmful.
And also there's a big difference between interviewing someone who's an activist and is putting their face out there and is loud and proud versus the person that's just living their everyday life and they don't want a lot of trouble. So we had to be very respectful for that because, you know, in certain areas, they may be putting themselves in danger by being on a film and getting themselves identified. And then possibly, you know, someone finding out their work address or, you know, things of that sort, or just their name. So we tried to be as sensitive to that as possible.
I mean, you managed to capture quite a few different kinds of people on camera per se, and also the club which you went to was amazing. That like there could be a club like that in Russia. Yeah. But there's an underground movement, and there are underground clubs, and sometimes the clubs are quite open per se, you know, but nobody knows what it is about, you know. So it's like that,
No, totally. Like that club you spoke of was really big and amazing and new, but you wouldn't know it existed outside. The front door was just a regular beaten down door and we were only invited in, and once you're in it's amazing, but you wouldn't know it existed.
I mean, in fact, even in India right now we don't have a single gay club yet. We don't have a single open gay club yet. There's only one Hotel Lalit which has these club nights where parties are hosted. But in India also, it's been complicated. We have traveled the journey, which Russia is right now traveling. When I started off in 1990, I came out and everything was just a whisper. There was absolutely nobody out there, nobody speaking about it. And we were some of the very early ones who came out and spoke. And it was really frightening because everything was underground. Everything was whispers, you know. For us to be able to pull that above ground took a lot of people across India. And now, of course, the younger people have taken charge and moving ahead. So it's fantastic. Was there any kind of difficulty for you while shooting? I mean, I think you already talked about a right-wing thing, but did the government in any way intervene?
No, so the way we set up our whole journey, it would have been illegal for us to make this film. So Liam and I, we had to pretend that we were just 2 tourists. So it was just myself and Liam traveling with just 2 cameras, and we had no translator with us. We had no other, videographer with us. So we had to travel very, very lightly. And what we would do is after we met someone and we filmed them, when we were still in their house, we would take out the SD card from the camera, the memory card from the camera, and we would hide that memory card like in our sock or somewhere, and then put in a memory card of just like tourist photographs of like a historic building, so that if we were stopped, we could say, oh, look, just tourist pictures here, we haven't done anything. Because I mean, one activist we met with in St. Petersburg, Dmitry, who you saw in the film, he is a known activist, and he said that his phone is tapped every single time he makes a phone call. He said he can literally hear the click of his phone being tapped. So he said, you've been texting and calling me. The odds are like maybe someone's tapping you, or they might pay attention to your messages. So we just stayed very, very careful, but we were lucky no police ever intervened. So
even our friend Yael in Moscow, she had her work and home address posted online, and her phone's tapped, and these really sort of disgusting dossiers about how to, essentially eliminate her. So yeah, we were quite concerned, but seeing their strength and resilience and how they navigate the world, we felt like we didn't have too much to worry about.
Yeah. And you couldn't be out there as a gay couple, right?
Oh, no.
You're just two friends
No.
who are traveling together.
Special friends.
Special friends, yeah.
What do you think is the main reason the gay propaganda law was brought into force, and how does it affect the Russian LGBTQ community?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a complicated question. There are quite a few reasons people think that the law was enacted, and Russia, big country, it's a superpower, but it is also a country that is in decline. And it's a country that is not doing that well economically. It has a negative birth rate. And quite often, it's not just Russian specific, but when a country is sometimes in decline and a government needs a reason to point as to why, the country's not doing so well, they will find a scapegoat. And usually that is a minority. It might be someone of color or a religious minority. In Russia's case, it used to be Jewish people. But even since the Stalin era, decades and decades ago, it was always gay men, the LGBT plus community, but gay men in particular. And part of that reason is that Russia is a really strong, it's a very, very strong masculine country. And being masculine is one of the nation's most prized things to be, is to be a man. So if you are queer, you are rejecting in some ways the country's most prized asset is to be a man in their eyes, in the government's eyes. Obviously that's not true. That's kind of some of the reasons behind that law. And I think, Vladimir Putin, the country's not doing that well. He wants to look strong. Vladimir Putin wants to look like a masculine macho man. And what better way than to criminalize queer people? It'll make him look strong and it'll make him get votes, really.
And also there's a lot of morality laws that exist in Russia that are so in line with the Orthodox Russian Church as well. So when it comes to their visions of morality, I guess it's kind of keeping a stranglehold on their country in that way. And the law itself is kept extremely vague. And that's deliberate and for a reason. It's because they're not identifying what actually breaks the propaganda law. So in the ways that they're able to keep it vague, no one knows whether they're breaking this law or not. And it's up to people that are witnessing it to essentially decide whether they are. So again, you're putting the morality clause on the part of the people, just to kind of keep this ever looping kind of
law. Really dangerous.
It's really dangerous.
It's really dangerous.
Yeah.
India currently, basically, because our economy is failing, they are finding scapegoats in the religious minorities. That's what is happening right now in India, and it's really sad that they kind of divert their attention from their real politics to something else and try to kind of flare up some other kind of stuff, which is a similar thing what you're talking about Russia.
Yeah.
But despite the difficulties, your film shows so many LGBTQ community members who are resilient, carrying on the good work, and even managing to smile and laugh. So many people are happy. So do share some of the interesting persons you met, like one or two people.
Before we do that, I think Russians are just so tough. I think Russian people are really strong. So I think a lot of people, they loved their country as well. A lot of people just wanted to make Russia better for their community. They really love Russia. And I think just being Russian means to be tough. So I think a lot of people were really resilient.
And I think also as well, even though their country makes the LGBTQIA plus people other, they don't see themselves as other, they see themselves as Russian.
Yeah.
Right.
So, they want to have their own rights in their own country that they love. So,
yeah.
But we met so many amazing people.
So many people. I think maybe I'll share someone and you can share someone. Okay. So the person I'll talk about wasn't in the film. Maybe that'll be interesting. Her name was Risa. She is a transgender woman in St. Petersburg. And just talking to you about how much they loved their country, Risa really loved her country. We met her in St. Petersburg, and she kind of said, there's nothing different about me. It's just my sexuality. And when we met with her, she brought us homemade sushi, and she organized for us to meet with her in her friend's artist studio, which is really cool and really beautiful. And she was so soft-spoken, and she was really, really nervous the whole time, I think, because she was probably really afraid to meet with us. Who are we? We could be anyone. It just, unfortunately, she wasn't in the film just due to like timing and all of that. But that moment became less about an interview and just more about spending time with someone who had been hurt a lot and had really made an effort to meet with us and bring us something lovely to eat. It was so touching, and she was just a really lovely person. Yeah, so mine was Risa.
Yeah, I think mine was when we got to Moscow and just meeting with Yael and her group of people in the transgender community, and I'm just totally in awe of her. She's such a pioneer. You know, transcribing lots of things about gender identity after the fall of the USSR, and just how she's really literally saved hundreds of lives in her time. And she's the funniest, most wicked sense of humor of anyone really I've ever met. She's the smartest, you know, actually the smartest person I've ever met. And just seeing the love that her and her husband have for one another, and you know, the fact that we can still call them our great friends now, and we stay in touch all the time. And I think for both of us, she's just been one of the, I'm just incredibly, eternally grateful that we met her.
Are you people in touch with those whom you filmed? How are they faring? I know that like a couple of them did migrate to US. I saw some photographs at the Santa Barbara Film Festival where you premiered a film. I think two of them were there. That's fantastic to know. But are you in touch with other people whom you filmed?
You saw Yael and Andre. They were lucky enough to get asylum in New York. So they were able to come to the film premiere in Santa Barbara, which was great. And so, yeah, we're very much so in touch with Yael and Andre. We talk to them pretty frequently. And with other people, luckily enough, we met a lot of these people, or we found a lot of these people through Facebook. So we're still kind of able to contact a lot of people. And whenever we post an update on Facebook or Instagram about the film, quite often we might get a like or comment from Boris, who was in St. Petersburg. So we are in contact with quite a few people. Unfortunately, there are some people that we met through a friend of a friend, and we never got their phone number and we never got their contact address because it was through someone that we had found via the organization. So they just happened to show up that day, and so we never got their information, unfortunately. So some people we haven't. But in general, yeah, we're still in touch with a lot of people.
Yeah, I was messaging with Dimitri the other day, and him and his husband just had their wedding anniversary. But yeah, again, you know, we had Dima that was in Nizhny Novgorod who got asylum. And I was in touch with them for quite some time, but they've just disappeared. And they've just disappeared from their social media pages, and you know, I think they were having quite a few personal issues. So you do wonder, you know, when you leave the country that's caused you so much trauma, the trauma doesn't stay in the country a lot of the time. But yeah, we're still in touch with quite a few people from the documentary. Yeah, just great.
How has the filming of the film changed your own personal lives in any way? Has it changed in any way?
Oh, massively. Yeah. It's one of the biggest things I've ever done. I think it's one of the biggest things Liam has ever done. Absolutely. I can't believe in some ways that we made it. It's only inspired me to want to make more films. Absolutely. Like, I think I maybe fully realized the power of film as a communication tool to really connect people together from, you know, the middle of Siberia, someone who is risking their life and sharing their life with you. And I remember being in their small apartment and having that really beautiful conversation with them, and then seeing that conversation all over the world and being shared with other people. It's a really, really beautiful thing and powerful thing. And it just makes you realize that we all very much so have the power and the ability to make things that can help other people, film or something else, whatever it is. So Yeah, and as you mentioned, like just how privileged we are, how lucky we are. It makes, I reflect on it all the time, just randomly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the one thing that I guess not changed my mind, but made me kind of reiterate it over and over again is that, you know, with everything that our queer communities face, we do have such a network of strength among one another, and there is such a shared feeling of compassion and wanting to bring everyone forward. And I think if anything, it just makes you have perspective on all social justice issues as they arise, and know that the power that you have to be able to change things, even if it's very, very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, with all the horrific things that we highlight in the movie, I hope it really does come across that one of the strongest things in there is love, their love for their country, their love for each other, because really, ultimately, it is the strongest thing that we all share, and we're all strong. So,
It's
yeah.
true.
I remember, I was reading one of your interviews, and you said that, when earlier in India, when people would come and the law was still in place, people would say, "How can we help you? You know, can we give you money?" But then money will sustain only for some time. And as I think in one of the interviews you mentioned, I don't think money can even reach the organizations in Russia because of the IRS and other stuff. You know, standing by each other, supporting one each other, and trying to raise the consciousness worldwide would be a thing. And your film is doing that. That's really kudos. And have you shown the film in Russia?
People have been able to see it, just individually, but no, it has not been able to be shown in Russia, unfortunately.
Yeah, when we met Boris in St. Petersburg and Paulina, there is an underground queer film festival that they have in St. Petersburg, but every time that they try and put it up, either the security tips off the right-wing people, or it just becomes this really big event that's not about the film festival, more about the activities that are happening outside of the festival, and putting people in danger. So we have shown it in Poland.
Yeah.
And how many festivals your film has already traveled to? What's been the reactions?
Yeah, no, we've been in quite a few festivals. I think we've been in like over 20 festivals at the moment. I think our last one was Dublin. And the one before that, as Lee mentioned, was Poland, the Watch Dogs Human Rights Festival in Poland. The overwhelming reaction we've gotten is quite often people didn't realize how bad it was in Russia. And I think that was one of the reasons why we wanted to make the film, is that so often, you know, you'll see a news article and you'll be like, oh, that's terrible. And then you'll read it and you go, okay, I understand what's going on. And then you move on. But I think sometimes those news articles, they lack that human dimension, that, you know, there are people behind that news article. There are people that are being affected by that. There are mothers and sons and daughters and uncles, and these are these people. I think when you really put a human face to it and you show their apartment and what their life is like, it really touches people. So I think that's been the biggest reaction, that people didn't realize how bad it was. And you had a similar reaction of just how strong people were and how resilient people were. A lot of people have said that as well.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I don't think it was the year that we thought, as anyone, thought we were going to have. But, you know, even the resilience of the film community, like everything that you're doing there, somehow you find a way. So,
Yeah.
you know, we've been in 20 plus festivals in all different countries, and it's been really amazing to see the reaction from people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a relentless documentary to watch, in the way that, you know, if you're going to a queer film festival, you might want to watch something with a bit of levity, but, you know, surprisingly, people have been very...
Yeah. But I think, honestly, just for me, that the festivals that mean the most are in countries where LGBT plus people are having a hard, difficult time. And that's why Watch Dogs in Poland meant a lot, because Poland is going through an awful lot. And this festival, India, like, honestly, it meant so much.
I was so happy
when we heard this, because India is one of the biggest countries in the world, and the queer population is huge, but going through, it's a hard time, as you said. Where are the queer nightclubs? So it means a lot more to be in festivals like yours, like this one, because it
Yeah, I
means
wish,
that.
but like I wish we would have had the COVID was not happening if we are having the festival off ground, because we screen at this beautiful Liberty Cinema, which is like an old Art Deco theater, 1,200 seats, and we pretty much fill up 1,200 seats. So it would have been amazing to watch your film on the big screen with 1,200 Indian people cheering for it. But well, hopefully some other time. So what is next on your what's the next project you people are working on? Are you taking time right now, taking in this particular film journey, or have you started planning for your next film?
Always planning, but I think right now I feel like it's more of like a research stage, you know, like we're thinking about lots of different ideas and topics and like other countries as well, and so we're just researching at the moment. But if we're all ears, if you've got an idea, we'll be there.
Yeah, you know, I think it's difficult as well because every country's kind of on standstill at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's a little hard to navigate filming and things like that. But you know, it's a good time for us to start planning. So
Really, thank you for joining this conversation. Been a pleasure having you both speak about The Worm in the Heart. And as I said, your film is in competition. I hope it wins. The awards ceremony will be on September 5th. So stay tuned on our social media networks. And right now, the festival is still ongoing. There are 2 more weeks of the festival. So if you're not bought a pass yet, please go and buy on MumbaiQFS.com. That's a website name. And please, you can still buy for the 2 weekends, which are still there, weekend 2 and 3. So thank you for joining in today, and really a pleasure talking to you.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Such an honor.
Thank you so much.